We had come for a peaceful weekend getaway, but the cabin we rented in the remote woods of Pitkin County, Colorado, quickly became something much darker. What was supposed to be a relaxing retreat with my wife Elena and our daughter Sophia turned into a nightmare that none of us could have predicted. A chance encounter with a strange woman, a mysterious warning in the dead of night, and a series of unsettling discoveries left us questioning everything we thought we knew about the place and about the things that lurked within. But it wasn't until we realized something was missing that the true horror of our weekend began to unfold. Who was the woman on the porch, and what did she really know? Why did she warn us about the bear? How did she know about our daughter's toy? And who or what had been inside the cabin when we weren't there? A few weeks ago, I rented a cabin near Pitkin County, Colorado for a weekend getaway with my wife and daughter. For their privacy, I'll refer to my wife as Elena, and my daughter, who's between 4 and 8 years old, as Sophia. It was dusk by the time we arrived at the cabin, far later than Elena and I had planned. The afternoon's anticipation gone, the promise of a relaxing vacation already sullied, and my back sore from changing the tire which had been eviscerated by the forest road. The mood was thoroughly ruined. Maybe that should have been an indication as to how the rest of the trip would go. The cabin itself was beautiful and rustic. Nestled among the towering pines, the 2-story building blended into the surrounding woodlands with its dark-stained wooden siding and stone chimney. Large windows glistened with the last light of day, and the wraparound porch boasted a hanging patio swing, much to Sophia's delight. She ran straight for it and started swinging as Elena and I carried the bags inside. When I unlocked the door and turned on the lights, I found myself surprised by the decor. In stark contrast to the classy, almost minimalist exterior of the cabin, the interior was remarkably cluttered. It was like every square surface, countertops, bookshelves, tables, etc., was covered in little trinkets, tchotchkes as my mother would have called them. There were coasters, candles, vintage oil lamps and compasses, and a bunch of wooden animal carvings, each about a foot tall. The interior wasn't dirty by any means, just more crowded than expected. I found it charming in a weird way, though Elena was less fond. I remember her taking a long look at the place and saying interesting, which is her code for I don't like what I'm seeing but I also don't want to make a big deal about it. It was past Sophia's bedtime, so after coaxing her off of the porch swing, I helped her get set up for the night. There were 2 bedrooms on the 2nd floor, a master suite with an attached bathroom, and a smaller bedroom that was pretty clearly set up as a kid's room for visitors to the cabin. The cabin was specifically advertised as family-friendly and good for parents with younger children, so it was no surprise when the smaller bedroom was full of colorful toys and plushies. There was a fireplace across from the bed, its mantel showcasing a full set of those wooden animal carvings, 1 moose, 1 bear, 1 trout, and so on. There was also one particularly large teddy bear sitting on the bed, partially buried under the covers like it was getting ready for bed. Sophia instantly fell in love, and I thought it was sweet that the cabin's owner had gone the extra mile to make the place welcoming. I didn't love the idea of her cuddling it to sleep though, since it likely hadn't been washed between visits, so I propped it up on a chair next to the bed before tucking Sophia in for the night. Tired from our travels, Elena and I went to sleep not too long afterwards. Saturday was our designated late day. After making breakfast and waking up Sophia, who had to be convinced not to take her new best friend Mr. Bear out on the water with us, we grabbed the kayaks off of our roof rack and headed down to the shore. We were a short walk from the lake and I was absolutely blown away by the natural splendor. Our cabin was semi-isolated, remote enough to give my family peace and privacy, but close enough to civilization that we could easily access help in case of an emergency. We were a 5-minute drive into town and a 5-minute walk to the nearest neighboring cabin, which we passed on the way to the lake. It was a gorgeous building, far more intricate and seemingly much older than the one we were renting. There was an older woman sitting on the porch as we passed it by, and although I couldn't wave since both hands were full with the kayaks, I gave her a nod and a friendly smile. She stared at me in response, her expression completely blank. She was looking directly at me, but almost looked like she was in a trance or something. What was that all about? I quietly asked Elena once we were out of earshot. Not sure, my wife answered. She looks pretty settled in there. Maybe that's her home and she doesn't appreciate her neighbor running an Airbnb. That seemed a logical explanation. I stole a quick glance over my shoulder before the house completely disappeared behind us, and saw that the woman was now walking down the steps of her front porch, her gaze still fixed on us. Elena and I exchanged worried looks and picked up the pace a little, Sophia running along ahead of us, joyful and oblivious. Once we reached the shore, we hopped into the kayaks and pushed off into the water. We weren't exactly running away from the woman. It was more so that we wanted to avoid a confrontation if we could. As we started paddling out into the lake, the woman appeared at the treeline, but never came any closer. I gave her a wave, and again, she gave me no response but a glower. It occurred to me that she might have been trying to warn us about the lake, maybe about a current or algal plume, but I'd researched the area extensively to make sure it was safe, and her demeanor wasn't quite urgent or benevolent enough for that to be the case. The rest of the day was thankfully devoid of any more strange encounters. After a calm day of swimming and hiking, We returned to the cabin in the evening for dinner and s'mores. Sophia brought Mr. Bear outside to help with the s'mores, to mine and Elena's amusement. We had no idea how we would convince her to leave the stuffed animal behind when we left on Monday night. After we put Sophia to sleep at 8 p.m., Elena and I watched a movie, had a drink, and then went to sleep at 10:30 or so. At midnight, according to my phone clock, I heard what sounded like a knock. I sat up in bed, checked the time, and listened for a minute. A few seconds passed, and then there came 3 knocks in quick succession. I gently shook Elena awake, waiting to hear the sound again, and after a moment, I did. There was someone at the front door of the cabin in the middle of the night. Concerned, I got out of bed and tried to look out the bedroom window. I could only see a sliver of the front porch, and though I couldn't see an actual person, I could see the shadow of one thanks to the porch lights. Needless to say, I wasn't thrilled to have a stranger pay our isolated cabin a midnight visit. I told Elena to stay upstairs and made my way to the first floor, stopping by the living room to pull back the curtains ever so slightly and peer through the window. Still, given the shape of the house and the placement of the windows, it was impossible to see anything but a shadow. The person must have been standing an inch away from the front door. I scanned the front yard and the distant tree line, but didn't see anyone else, so a decoy situation seemed unlikely. But I still grabbed my handgun just in case. Just my luck, the old front door of the house didn't have a peephole, so I got up close to the door and tried talking to the person on the other end. "Can I help you?" I said. Instead of answering, the person knocked again, this time more urgently. No way in hell was I opening that door now. "Look, friend, if you need help you better speak up. Otherwise I'm gonna have to ask you to get off my damn porch before I call the police." The knocking stopped, and after a moment, there was a woman's voice on the other side of the door. Her tone was nervous and her voice was soft. She said a single sentence: "He's watching your daughter through the bear." Of all the things I expected to hear from our unwelcome visitor, that was not one of them. I readied my gun and cracked the door open. When I looked out into the night, I saw the elderly woman from earlier quickly shambling away from my door. Her back was turned towards me and she looked like she was trying to get away from my porch as quickly as she could. I called after her, asking her what she was talking about, but she didn't look back. She just kept going until the night swallowed her up completely. I was pretty disturbed at this point, so I shut and locked the door and made my way back upstairs. Elena was waiting for me at the top of the stairs, and I quietly explained to her what was going on. Horrified, she went into Sophia's room and gently took the teddy bear out of our sleeping daughter's arms. We went downstairs and laid the bear out on the kitchen counter. I grabbed a pair of kitchen shears and dissected the thing, making an incision in its fluffy body and pulling out its cotton innards. It wasn't that I believed the old woman, just that as a parent, anything related to my kid's safety, even something that sounds outlandish, is something I take seriously. Even though the woman was likely suffering from some kind of cognitive impairment, I still wanted to investigate. I pulled all the stuffing out of Mr. Bear and found nothing, though Elena pointed out that the bear had 2 very large glass eyes which could potentially be concealing a small camera. I was unable to find a hammer, but I did find a wrench under the kitchen sink. I wrapped the eyes in a kitchen towel and smashed them to bits, but when I sorted through the fragments, I didn't see anything that looked like a recording device. I was relieved, but I was also equal parts creeped out and angry. Maybe, like Elena had mentioned earlier, she was annoyed with the constant visitors to our neighboring cabin and was trying to scare us off. She might also have had some mental health issues or hallucinations. In either case though, how did she know about the teddy bear? Maybe she had visited the house before, or maybe it was just a lucky guess. Before returning to bed, I took a turn around both floors of the cabin, looking and failing to find anything out of the ordinary. Elena was also pretty freaked out, and she got up several times in the night to visit Sophia's room down the hall and make sure all was well. Needless to say, neither of us got much sleep that night. Sunday morning was all doom and gloom, which ended up being a perfect reflection of my daughter's attitude when she woke up and realized Mr. Bear was gone. Obviously, we didn't tell her what had happened, but Elena and I did our best to distract her with flapjacks and promises of a fun day of adventuring. Unfortunately, the hike we had planned was foiled by a downpour that, of course, the forecast hadn't predicted, and so we decided to salvage the day by exploring the small town nearby. It wouldn't be the escape into nature we'd hoped for, but there were several family-owned restaurants and shops in the area, as well as a small library. The morning was alright. I enjoyed exploring the little town with my family, although there wasn't much to do. We had an early lunch at around 11 or so, but when we sat down, my wife started rifling through her backpack with a look of dismay. When I asked her what was wrong, she said that she didn't see Sophia's EpiPen, which we always like to have at the ready when we eat out. I realized immediately that I'd forgotten to put it back in Elena's backpack yesterday when I was reorganizing her stuff. I felt like such an idiot, and Elena, already grouchy from a sleepless night, really chewed me out for it. To make amends, I told her to wait with Sophia at the restaurant while I hurried back to the cabin for the EpiPen. She was displeased, but it felt like a better option than all of us braving the rain to return to the cabin. The drive back was an absolute nightmare. Sure, it was a short commute, but the dirt roads leading up to the cabin had turned to sludge in the heavy rain. I was in a foul mood when I entered the cabin. I shut the front door with a slam and made my way to the stairs. The house was dark thanks to the storm outside, dark enough that I almost missed the muddy shoe prints leading up the hardwood steps. When I saw them and realized what they were, I stopped in my tracks. I didn't have to wonder what they meant. Someone had been in the cabin since my family left, and judging by the fact that there was only one set of prints, they likely were still in the house with me at that very moment. I stood on the half landing, looking up at the second half of the staircase. The upper floor was eerily dark, so much so that someone could have been standing right at the edge of the staircase and I wouldn't have been able to see them. I carefully walked backwards down the stairs, keeping my eyes peeled in case any shape suddenly emerged from the darkness, and once I made it down the stairs, I turned around and ran outside. I sat in my car and called the police to report a break-in. After calling Elena to explain the situation, I sat in my car and watched the house until the police arrived, which took almost an unreasonable amount of time. I never saw any movement from inside the house, nor did I see anyone leave, though I didn't have a great visual on the back door. It's possible that the intruder could have slipped through the back and run straight for the woods, in which case the cabin would have obscured them. The police were shockingly curt and dismissive about the whole thing. One of the officers who arrived on scene asked me for proof of a break-in, as if I would have had time to snap a picture of the intruder in my house or something. They did a sweep of the cabin and found no one inside, but even so, I didn't want my wife and daughter to set foot in that building again. I texted Elena, telling her I was going to pack up our stuff and that we should leave a night early, and she agreed. The cops stayed with me as I packed to give me some peace of mind, which I appreciated. Aside from the shoe prints, there weren't any obvious signs of a break-in, and strangely, nothing of value had been stolen, even though I'd left my laptop laying out in plain sight. What do you think really happened at the end of the story? Could the strange woman have been a victim herself? Or was she something far more sinister? If you were in our place, would you have stayed in the cabin after the first warning, or left immediately? And who or what do you think was inside the cabin when we weren't there? Could it have been watching us the entire time? Share your theories about the mysterious occurrences and what you believe the ending truly means. Was it a resolution, or is the nightmare far from over? Thankfully, we packed light, so it didn't take me long to grab all of our stuff from the master bedroom and the bathrooms. My last stop was Sophia's room, where I was quickly able to locate and pack all of her things. Nothing of Sophia's had been stolen or tampered with, but there was something missing from the fireplace mantel. Right in the center, there was a circular impression in the fine layer of dust, indicating that a certain figurine had recently been separated from its wooden brethren. Someone had taken the bear.